Great. So thanks everyone and welcome. Good afternoon. I appreciate you joining us today for this short webinar about the DataStream application and our pilot project with the Gordon Foundation. A little bit of background, I guess, to get us started. Back in the good old days of 2015, Conservation Ontario came up with a new strategic plan, a new strategic direction. And part of that, one of the goals was to aggregate, manage, and disseminate shared knowledge, shared CA knowledge, that is. And one of the subheadings in our information management strategic plan under that was under technical program development, was to focus on open data and CA capacity for open data over the next several years. We began that in 2016 with a project, a multi-year project to enable conservation authorities to make their data more discoverable, accessible, and available, read open. And we received some funding from the Great Lakes Observing System to that end and to help us get started. And part of that multi-year, to kick off that multi-year project, we first focused on doing a geospatial data inventory of all the conservation authorities. And we identified over 1,300 data sets, of which about 14% of those data sets were monitoring data sets, including water quality. And we asked conservation authorities to identify data-specific barriers to release as open data for all of those data sets. And around the monitoring data sets, some of those perceived barriers were data readiness, so raw data versus QA/QC data, data sensitivities, and perceived legal issues around IP and ownership, or intellectual property rights and ownership. At the end of doing that data inventory, we also, or part of that data inventory was to identify data users, perceived existing data users and potential future data users. And we also endeavored to do a user needs analysis based on that list of data users. So conservation authorities identified all levels of government, from municipal to provincial and federal, as well as academia, private industry, and consultants, environmental consulting companies, to name a few. And we reached out to a bunch of those and asked them what their interests were in terms of conservation authority data sets. And just looking here, I think water quality data ranked 4th or 5th on that list, with over half of the people that were surveyed from that user needs analysis identifying that water quality data was a priority interest of theirs going forward. So moving forward with our multi-year program, from 2018 onward, we focused on metadata. We examined the state of CA metadata and established a common minimum metadata standard that we thought would work for all conservation authorities, as well as our funding partner, in that case, Great Lakes Observing System. And we collaborated on the design and development of an online multi-tenant metadata application with Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority, using the model that was developed by Grand River Conservation Authority for their own internal purposes. And then more recently, we've kind of focused on open data platforms and kind of evaluated what CAs were currently using, what was available to them, and what was cost effective. And with all conservation authorities having access to Esri technology through a common EA, that turned out to be one of the lowest cost, highest benefit platforms. And so a number of you conservation authorities have gone the route of looking into the Esri Open Data Hub, and there are currently 8 CA open data hubs out there and a couple of independent open data sites. Just in the last year, Conservation Ontario has created an open data hub that federates all of those Esri ones, and we're looking at ways to pull in other open data from other Conservation Authority platforms as well, in order to make them searchable through all one location if possible. There's over 250 data sets available, I think, currently for download. And sadly, not a lot of those are water quality data sets. And so we saw an opportunity here to focus on those data sets that aren't currently part of CA Open Data and work to get those available. And we were fortunate to be approached by the Gordon Foundation, whose interest is water quality, about the possibility of creating what they call the Great Lakes DataStream. It's an application that we're going to learn a little bit more about today, but that focuses around the Great Lakes, and in particular Great Lakes on the Canadian side and Ontario, and recognizing that conservation authorities are big players in terms of data collection and creation around water quality in Ontario. It was a natural partnership, I think, for us to develop this pilot project that we've embarked upon, whereby we want to work with conservation authorities to make their water quality data open and available through the DataStream application. So without much more ado on my part, I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Carolyn Dubois, who's the director of the water program with the Gordon Foundation, and who is responsible for the development of the original Mackenzie DataStream, and Patrick Leclerc, who's a data specialist with Gordon Foundation. And Patrick has a background in water quality and data management, and both of them are passionate advocates of open data and working with groups across Canada to tell their story through data. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Carolyn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We're just going to queue up the slides. While we're doing that, I suppose I'll just say, we're so excited to be here today and have this opportunity to speak to so many CAs at once. We know that it's really clear to us, having worked in other regions, but coming here and getting to know the Great Lakes, that conservation authorities are a huge part of both generating data and using data to inform decision making. So this is just a great opportunity for us, and we're really happy to be meeting with you all. And if you can just make sure that your mics are muted, we hear a little bit of background noise, that'd be great. Okay. All right, so in our presentation today, we're going to cover quite a lot of ground, but please, keep questions in mind or type them into the chat box, because we can go deeper in some of these areas, but our hope is to just give you a kind of holistic idea of what it is that we're doing, and we can dive deeper where you're interested. So I'm going to start off with some quick history and growth. We'll talk about some of the key principles that have made DataStream successful, including our positioning. Then you're going to get a demo of DataStream, so you're actually going to get to see it in action. Patrick's going to show you how that works. And then we'll talk about Great Lakes DataStream and some of our next steps around building and growing the DataStream hub here. Okay, so I do think our history, I won't draw on too long on this, but I do think the history of this initiative is important to share, because it gives you an idea of where we're coming from, and also I think an idea of where we're going with this initiative. So I'm going to start off with just a bit of that context, and then we'll dive right in. So I work with the Gordon Foundation, and this is a 55-year-old organization. For a big part of our history, we worked on water issues across the country, and particularly focused on water policy issues. I am actually based in Toronto, but as I said, our work has been pan-Canadian throughout our history. Now, the fact that we focused on water policy issues and that we now find ourselves talking to you today about a data platform that we've built, I think is a bit of an interesting story. And where that comes from is, 10 years ago or so, we were looking at building some programming in Canada's Mackenzie Basin, which you can see pictured here. And we brought together lawyers, scientists, policy experts, government officials. They all came together. And the question being asked was, what needs to be done to protect the Mackenzie Basin? And the result that came out of that was really interesting to us. There were three sort of key takeaways. The first was that any water management in this part of the country needs to be transboundary in scope. So you can see in that picture there that the Mackenzie Basin crosses 6 jurisdictional boundaries within Canada. So it was any management has to be basin-wide. Secondly, it was surprisingly, it's been really difficult to get your hands on data within the Mackenzie Basin to be able to answer basic questions about freshwater health. So we need to address that challenge so we can say how the waters are doing now so that that can inform decision making. Now, thirdly, and this is a big takeaway for us and it really fit with our programming, the recommendation was anything that's done in the Mackenzie Basin has to involve the communities that live and work within the basin. And many of these are, in the case of the Mackenzie Basin, some very remote communities in some cases. So we took that away and we began working with our founding partner, the government of the Northwest Territories, to begin to work on that. Now, the reason they were a perfect partner for us and for this initiative was that the government of the Northwest Territories was and is leading a very, very progressive program that has communities throughout the territory out actively, deciding on what questions they want to answer about their local waters, and then carrying out monitoring programs to address those questions. Now, the issue they were facing at the time was, okay, so once all this data is collected throughout the territory, where does it go? So we got together with the government of the Northwest Territories to build a platform that we from the outset, the pilot was, we'll take in all that community generated data, but longer term, as in any basin, we'll start bringing in data from all different sources throughout the basin. So, into Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and start pulling that together because of course, everybody's interested in what's happening upstream of them. And so that's exactly what we did. And that led to the creation of Mackenzie DataStream, which Rick mentioned. And so you're going to see this in action, but very, very high level. This is what Mackenzie DataStream and DataStream is. It's an open access site for water quality data specifically. It's free and open for anyone to use. We've really, really focused on making it as user-friendly as possible, for both community members and decision makers with sort of varying levels of scientific expertise. And you'll see there's a great map-based search. So we've always been focusing on making the data as discoverable and easy to access as possible. Now, when we launched Mackenzie DataStream 4 years ago, we actually launched it in Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories and also on Parliament Hill. And what was really interesting and what came of that was we wound up getting calls, we knew that what we were doing was addressing a real need in the Mackenzie Basin. But I don't think at that point, we didn't really realize how chronic and sort of universal the data challenges are sort of across Canada and beyond. And so what we began to hear from groups across the country was, we have so much data. We have historical data. Some of it's like quite literally in shoe boxes in a scientist's garage. Some of it's on floppy disks. Some of it is in spreadsheets, but it's on someone's computer. And when they retire, how are we going to make sure that that data is shared? And so I always think whenever I see this picture, it kind of, it makes me uneasy, but I think that this makes a lot of people uneasy. It's just the realization that data is there's so much of it that it's everywhere. So we began speaking to, all of these organizations across the country that were identifying the same problems within their region. And we got to work on expanding DataStream. The platform doesn't itself, it's a piece of software. And our model of working in collaboration with regional groups is something we knew we could bring to other parts of the country. And so we launched Atlantic DataStream in partnership with an organization called Atlantic Water Network in June of 2018. And shortly after, in 2019, we launched Lake Winnipeg DataStream with the Lake Winnipeg Foundation that carries out a very big monitoring program in that part of the country as well. And our plans are moving forward. It is to expand across, pan-Canadian expansion is sort of in our sight lines, but we do want to sort of do this region by region because such a big part of what we've been able to do is because of these partnerships. I'm in Toronto, I'm not in Yellowknife. We need to work with people in these places in order to bring this data together. So, and next up, and why I think all of you are on this, call, we are looking at expansion into the Great Lakes region. So just to give you a sense of our trajectory, to date, over 100 different organizations contribute data to DataStream, and you're going to hear a little bit about the variety of those organizations from Patrick in a few minutes. And we have over 9 million unique observations on DataStream, and that is very rapidly growing. So some of the keys to our success to date, I'll just share these to give you a sense of our model and our positioning. One of the things that we do very well on DataStream is we provide clarity on data ownership and a mechanism for publishing data. So when we began working with a lot of the Indigenous communities we first started out with, like this was issue number one. And I think it often is issue number one for anybody collecting data, whether it be in academia or an Indigenous community or a watershed organization or a CA. So, we provide just a very clear mechanism for publishing the data. And for it to then be cited down the road. So you're not handing over ownership to the Gordon Foundation or DataStream by any means. We're an independent organization and have neutral positioning. So what I mean by that is, it's really easy for us to work across jurisdictional boundaries, across sectoral boundaries. We work with universities, we work with governments at all scales. And it's very easy for us to do that. And we're also not in competition with organizations that collect data, because we ourselves don't do that. So that positioning has been really, really important for our success to date. Next is around sustainability. A lot of organizations rightly ask, we want to know that are you going to be around in 3 years? We don't want to invest this time in pulling data together and working with you to get it online if you're going to, disappear. And our answer to that is that we are a very sustainable organization. The foundation, as I said, has been around over 50 years. And we've treated DataStream from the get-go as a program, not a project. So this is an initiative that we're making a long-term commitment to. And we do fundraise from external sources, but having sort of that skeleton-based funding internally is really, really wonderful in terms of that sustainability. We're constantly improving the platform. So what you see on DataStream today will likely be better tomorrow. We've built and we continue to build transparency and trust in a lot of different ways, but one really kind of cool sort of technologically driven way is that we use blockchain technology to track, to ensure you can see that the data you're viewing on DataStream was in fact the data uploaded by the original contributor. We also, of course, build trust in other ways, which is just, building good relationships in the places we work. And then that brings me to the last point, which I'm just going to emphasize again, is the strength of our partnerships has been really key to our being able to get data out there. So there's tons of organizations that share sort of a passion and a mandate for getting data out there, and we found really good partners to do that with. So to just pull it, before I hand it over to Patrick to provide you with a demo so you can see DataStream in action, I'm just going to bring it back to sort of that original point I made about the Gordon Foundation being very interested in informed policymaking and how DataStream fits in. So we call this, we're calling this sort of the data to policy cycle. And this is sort of the why behind why are we working on data in the first place? And it really is about, we know how much data is being collected by communities of all, types across the country. Data needs to live somewhere and be managed in a way that is scientifically robust and reliable and neutral, I think is really important as well. Only when you have data available in those kinds of formats that are interoperable, et cetera, can you pull that data together from multiple programs to answer questions that you may have, now and into the future, questions we probably can't even predict today that people will be asking in 15 years. That's when you take that open data and you turn that into knowledge about what's happening within a watershed. And then only when you have that knowledge can you inform action and policy making. And I think I'm in good company on this call because my understanding of the work of CAs is you touch so many parts of this data to policy cycle and sort of get that, we want to avoid data collection for data collection's sake, sort of, challenge, I think, that is often faced. So all of this is to say is we see ourselves as just one piece of this broader cycle. So we're handing it over now to Patrick, who's going to show you DataStream in action.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, so I'm going to just talk to you guys now here a bit about, show you guys the platform and talk a bit more about the the program side of things. So I'm just going to pull up the site here. Okay, so we're going to start here with Atlantic DataStream. I'm actually based here in Halifax. So Carolyn's in Toronto and the organization's based there, but since we are so pan-Canadian, we do have myself here in Halifax, as well as some of my colleagues in Calgary as well. So
I'm sorry, Patrick, we're not seeing what you're demoing.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Patricia. That's always great when somebody is on the call to give you the heads up. Okay.
Yeah, but okay.
Oh, sorry, whoever that was. Thank you. Okay, cool. Can you see the screen now?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Sweet. So yeah, so here's the site, Atlantic DataStream. I'm based in Halifax. So one of the key things, like Carolyn mentioned earlier about DataStream, is on one of our previous slides, was that we're a map-based search. So that's one of the interesting things with DataStream. We allow people to kind of zoom in to a region or an area that they're interested in. And as they get closer, these points kind of show up, and you can see all of the different monitoring locations that exist in that region. And then by clicking on one, you can go into the data set. So I'll show you that in a second. But before we do, we also allow people to put on the different watersheds that exist in their region, so we can kind of see which watersheds have monitoring occurring in them. We also allow people to view which historical treaties they're part of as well. In addition to using the map for the search, you can also actually use our search bar up here. This allows people to filter by organization, so you can see all the different organizations that exist within the region and filter by them. You can also filter by some of the common characteristics. These are just the common ones. In DataStream, we actually allow over 6,000 different parameters, or you can filter by region, so province or watershed. So for this one, we're just gonna kind of zoom in down here and go check out a data set. So let's go into this one. So when we click on the point, we see the data set name, ID, coordinates, and the data set name. So when I click on the data set name, it's gonna take me in here to the data set. Once in the data set, I get a quick visualization. So this shows me for the location I clicked on, which is the Centennial Trail, I can see all of the temperature data for 2007 to 2019. So if I kind of hover over the points, I can see the exact value as well as the day and the location. I can also click here on the left to add different locations in as well. So we can now cross compare different sites. Or you can go to the map, either up here or down here. And from the map, I can see and say, oh, well, I'm looking at this point and this point. Maybe that's not where I'm looking. I can then remove that and add this new comparison site based on the map. And then now I can compare those two sites that maybe have more to do with each other based on the map. In addition to adding characteristics, you can also change the chart type. So this one here is a simple scatter. We also do line, bar, and box plots. These box plots are pretty great because they're just a quick and easy way to kind of see, to make sure your data is all kind of within a reasonable range and see what your median and quartiles are. You can also change your media type. This one is just surface water, but we also have sediment data. You can change your characteristic. Like I said, we have over 6,000. So if I click on something like pH, it'll now pull up this pH data. So I can see the pH data for these two sites. You'll notice these dotted lines. So these dotted lines represent the guidelines for the CCME, which is the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment. They're water quality guidelines. So we have all of the water quality guidelines for CCME and the United States Environmental Protection Agency, chronic and acute for a number of different parameters, for actually all the ones that they offer. So if a parameter has guidelines next to it, you can actually add these, turn them on and off, and see how your water compares. And then you can also change the date to see which date range you want to look at. In addition to the visualizations, we also provide some quick summary statistics that you can also download to quickly see, your min, max, and mean. So once you kind of look at the data and you decided this is a data set that you're interested in, you can come up here to the download button. You don't need to have an account or be logged in to download data on DataStream. So you just click there, agree to the terms, hit download. So when you download the data, you're going to get the full data set as well as a data set level metadata sheet as well. What that data set level metadata is, you can find it here in this when you click on data set and contact information. It just kind of tells you who collected the data, how to contact them, and then some information about how they collected the data and their program. This just gives you some more context so people can make sure that the data set is fit for the purpose they're looking for and know who to go to if they have any questions. In addition to that, we also offer this DOI feature. A DOI is a digital object identifier. It's a permanent link that's also unique for each data set. It's what we recommend people using to share it because it'll actually never change. So not only does it allow for the data set to continuously be shared and never have to worry about links failing, what it also does is it allows researchers or people who are looking to use your data, you can use it in citations, and then you can also track those citations so you can see who is actually using your data. If you put your DOI into something like Google Scholar, it'll show you all the papers that have had you cited, and we've already started to have some of our data sets being cited there. You can also add attachments. So if you have any photos or videos or sampling procedures or reports, you can add those. We also allow people to view the data license. So the data license is, we provide 2 data licenses. They're both through the Open Data Commons, which is like a open source data license. One's attribution. So that means just that people, if they use the data, have to make sure they cite you. The other is public domain. So the data is fully public domain and open, and it's fair for anybody to use, and they don't need to cite you to use it. To add those, when you upload your data, it's actually the click of one button, and then it licenses your data. So it makes the data licensing process very clear and easy. We also have an API. So an API just allows for computer-to-computer integration through of the data. So this, if you click on the API, it'll take you to where there's a link to this specific data set. You can then filter through that. So just filter to make sure you can filter by date, characteristic, and it allows you then to pull just the data you're interested in through an API rather than actually manually going into the site. And that's free to use as well. So that's kind of a general gist of the site. I'd recommend going on and checking it out and playing around with it yourself. I haven't really touched on everything. There's lots here, and it's really great for kind of seeing what's happening in and around different regions. But one thing I also wanted to show you guys while we're here as a sneak peek. Nobody actually outside of our organization has seen this yet, so you guys get to be the first one to see it. But it's actually what the Great Lakes DataStream site will look like. So as Carolyn said, we're going to be launching Great Lakes DataStream next year. In the meantime, you can still upload your data, but you won't be able to go on the map like I did in Atlantic DataStream. But next year you will, and it'll look something like this. So this will be the Great Lakes DataStream site. So when people go in and click on Explore Data, it'll take them to this map. You can see the white area here. This is what we're considering in our Great Lakes region. You can see there's already some data populated here. That's the Provincial Water Quality Monitoring Network data from the Ontario government. And yeah, so you'll be able to, what'll happen next year, so we'll get your data online now, and then next year when this launches, people will, when it launches, be able to come in, zoom into an area where you are collecting data, and they'll be able to see the locations in your region, click on it, and then view your data from there. So that's kind of a quick demo. Again, recommend checking out the site on your own to kind of get a full idea of what it's all about. But I'm just going to switch my share to back to the PowerPoint. I think you can see it. Okay, awesome. So back to the PowerPoint. So yeah, so that's kind of the way the site works, but just kind of a bit more about the program. So in terms of who contributes data to DataStream, we have a wide variety of organizations. That's been one of our strengths so far. Is being able to, be robust enough for researchers and Environment Canada, but also, easy enough to use for any multiple different size of community groups, everybody from 1 or 2 employees to, 10 to 100 employees. So we see a wide range of contributors. As you can see on the right, this is from 2019. We actually currently have over 100 people contributing. So the number has changed, but the ratios are kind of similar, where we see the majority of groups being community-based groups because there are so many of them. And then we've also have the federal government, the provincial governments. We have more now. We have, I think, 7 of the provincial governments currently involved in DataStream, as well as researchers and Indigenous groups as well. So what are these groups adding? As I mentioned before, over 6,000 parameters. So there's lots of different types of data that they're adding. Our two main media types are water quality and sediment data. So sediment's something that we just recently added. And this is everything from lab data, so your nutrients, metals, could also be biological data like E. coli and coliforms, to your classic field parameters, so your pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen, Secchi depth. So that's kind of the main aspects that people add. So how do they contribute this? So people contribute data to DataStream by putting it into our data model. So that's one of our key kind of premises of the site is your data has to be in our format. The reason for this is that's what allows us to have the site as interactive as it is, but it also allows for easy comparison across data sets. So you and another person in your jurisdiction, whether it be a province or another community group or another CA, maybe in a close boundary, you can easily compare that data. Our data model was based on the WQX, or the Water Quality Exchange, which is from the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the United States Geological Service. They created this template. We've since taken that and then modified it for the Canadian context. So once people put it into the format using our upload template, they then just click and drag a CSV file onto the site. We check to make sure that it has all the right columns, everything has the right names, and it has all the required information, and then the data gets uploaded to the site. So there's kind of two main ways to upload currently. One is, like I just said, that kind of manual, you go in, you format the data yourself, and you click and add it in. We've seen this as kind of the main way for people to add it so far, just because this has been a great tool for people who didn't previously have open data. But we've this past year added a new feature, this ETL tool, which is extract, transform, load. Basically what it does is it allows us to pull from existing already open data platforms, put it into our data format, and then load it onto DataStream. So if you do already have open data and you want to get involved in kind of an automated process, let us know and we can set that up. So why contribute to DataStream? There is some work to it. Open data, we've talked about, Carolyn's talked about the benefits of it, but why on a case by, we have a couple cases here of why individual groups have added. So one example here is in New Brunswick on the St. John River. We had Environment Canada was looking at getting a full temperature profile of the St. John River from Quebec down into New Brunswick. So it's a large area as well across many different jurisdictional boundaries. So as part of this project, they wanted to set up a central data set that all of these groups could contribute to. So they created this St. John River temperature data set and gave all these groups permission. So now all of these groups add data to this data set. And this allows for this data set to be created with a bunch of different groups and to really bring that collaboration together in the region. Another example is the Passamaquoddy group in New Brunswick. They're in First Nations group there. And what they do is they just started a brand new program. And when they started their new program, they wanted to, tailor their monitoring to make sure that they weren't duplicating efforts. So what they did is they went onto DataStream. They saw who was monitoring in their region, where and what, and they were able to use this information to then say, okay, awesome, we can use data in these rivers. Why don't we go to these other areas that aren't being monitored? And they were able to, better increase coverage in the region, and then also, make sure that they weren't monitoring at the same spots as others. Also, by having their data all in the same format, it made it really easy for them to then cross-compare their data with other people in the region. Finally, we have the World Wildlife Fund's watershed reports. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but this was an effort in 2017. WWF decided to try and assess the health of all Canadian watersheds. As part of this process, the major finding was actually that over half of Canada's watersheds actually were data deficient. So didn't have enough data to actually make a judgment call. So from 2017, they said they would revisit it every 3 to 5 years. So in 2020, this year, they just revisited it and just released their new results. And with these new results, they've also noticed that there still are a good number of watersheds that are data deficient, but the number's actually gone down about 20% to 46% of watersheds, so under half now. Part of actually what they've cited in their report is that it was due partially to new large databases like DataStream that's allowed them to easily access the data. So we actually supply our data to them through our API, which then they use to help populate this. So that's another reason, you know, we have people contributing to DataStream, is it helps to meet some of these data gaps and allows us to have these large scale programs, because DataStream is one hub with all of the data in the same format and standard. So actually, with that being said, I'm going to throw it over to Carolyn to finish off here.
Okay, can you hear me? I don't think I've managed to get my camera back on.
Yeah.
Is it on?
I don't know. We can hear you though.
I may have to go cameraless because I've now lost the button. Technology these days. Anyway, okay. So just to sort of finish us off, because we do want to leave time for questions. And Patrick, I don't seem to have control of this. Can you guys see this whole slide? Anyone?
It's the watershed, the WWF watershed report slide.
And you can see everything. It's not zoomed in.
Nope, can see it.
All right, it's zoomed in for me, but I'll do my best. Okay, so yeah, just to finish this off, and we do want to leave time for questions. I think that last example with WWF is something like we're really, really proud of, sort of in a collective way with many of the partners that we work with, because, you know, we saw in some really remote parts of the country, like that all of a sudden community-based data that otherwise wouldn't have been made available or easy for WWF to access was all of a sudden visible and available in a format that they could use. And so, you know, it just goes to show you that, you know, we've been at this for 4 years, but, you know, with more of this work and pulling more data together, I think, you know, we can start to work with all of the groups who are out there collecting data of all sizes to be able to say much more about watershed health, you know, not just WWF, but other organizations who are doing similar assessments. And I mean, I just read recently, to borrow, or I suppose steal an expression from Canada's chief statistician, who said that data really is a team sport. So it's, you know, DataStream's a piece of this, and I hope you're seeing in this presentation that, you know, we address one side of this, but it really is all about sort of collaborating with others to get the data out there that we need. So DataStream is coming to a watershed near you, as you've seen. And, you know, in presenting to all of you today, I hope we've answered some questions or you've learned something about DataStream, but we also hope that some of you might be willing and interested in being some initial sort of quote unquote guinea pigs to get some data online. We do have the Provincial Water Quality Monitoring Network data that I know many of you are involved in collecting that data and contributing that, but we are looking to go beyond that and bring more data in. Our hope here is that by the time DataStream launches in a year, it's full of data, and it's full of data that's representative of all the amazing work that's happening in the Great Lakes, so that, you know, when we finally do make it live, it's all of a sudden it's sort of all there, and we have as much participation as possible. So that's where we're headed with this, and I'll leave it there and open it up to questions.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Rick, you're muted if you're talking.
Okay.
You're still muted, Rick.
Okay, there we go. Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you're good.
You just said the host muted me. I think Patricia was messing with me there. Anyway, thanks very much, Carolyn and Patrick, for that overview of the DataStream application. And as I mentioned off the top, we have embarked on this pilot project to help DataStream onboard and Gordon Foundation onboard some CA data here. They're, you know, in speaking to a number of you individually, I've learned that, you know, water quality data is all over the place currently. We have some CAs who do make it publicly available through open data, and it's available either through the Whiskey platform or through some other proprietary platform. And and some have it available and in a ready database, but it's not currently open yet. And so we've even got, well, I saw that one slide with the shoe boxes and the paper copies and all that sort of stuff, and the real old computers. And I'm sure there's a few CAs that are in that state as well. And part of the reason for embarking on this pilot is to make those resources available to you for a short period of time at least, to enable you to get to a point where you are able and comfortable with sharing your data. So we do have a few questions, and I'll hand it over to Patricia to handle some of those. But I'd like to kick it off with a question of my own to Patrick. I saw your mention of the DOI, and I'm wondering how that might work in the example of a conservation authority who has water quality data as open data. How would they make use of that DOI? And how would it permeate through your application, and how would they be able to track who's using their data?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that question there, Rick. Yeah, so the DOI, one of the benefits, I mean, the quick, easy kind of use of it is you can use it to link to the data. So if you're on your site and you're just saying like, hey, we're creating a link, we're doing this DataStream project, you can use the DOI as a persistent link. So you don't have to worry if you've ever gone on a site and clicked on the link and the link's broken and you can't get to the data, it'll always be there. So that's one of the benefits. As for the tracking of it, like I said, you can manually go in and search it up yourself in Google Scholar. We do hope to add some more analytics, so it allows us eventually to have that on our site where you would be able to see that. So that's something that we might add in the future, but it then allows people to search it. But it's also really just beneficial for the people who put their data on DataStream, the CAs, like it'll be beneficial in those reasons, but also it's really helpful for researchers and stuff and making sure the data is being cited properly. So that's another benefit, is you'll make sure that your data is being cited and used properly, and that you're getting the attribution that you should be getting.
And if I can just add really quickly to that, if in the case, and we've seen this case with some of the organizations we work with that already have open access, in the case where they've already published their data under a DOI, because more and more organizations are doing this, what we do is we just pull that DOI over. So the DOI will still point to that original source of the data in that original link. So that's something we've done before, and it seems to work.
Okay, cool, thanks. So Patricia, I see some questions in the chat, as well as some people with their hand up.
Yeah, Brian's had his hand up first, so he can go ahead and ask his question.
All right, thank you guys very much. I guess I just had a question. Oh, I can even open up my camera, so I'm not in secret mode. When we talk about choosing one of the two licenses that you have available, and some of us already have our license or our data available under an open license, and not every open license is the same. We are actually non-government, non-profit, which means we pay insurance, unlike a government agency, which means our open license has already been reviewed by our insurance company. Is there a way to leverage our own license instead of one of the pre-selected two that you specified there?
Yeah, we've seen this before, Brian. So what we do in that case, and this is, I'd say it's like a small percentage of the organizations we've worked with so far that have sort of your same circumstances. And so what we actually provide is, so long as your existing license is open, and it sounds like it is, you can actually just cut and paste your license and put it into DataStream, and that will display with the data.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we see, especially governments, like you said, very similar situation, doing the same thing.
Then Aaron Clark has a question. Does ETL account for data changes? If it downloads open data, what triggers an update?
Yeah, for sure. So the ETL process does account for changes to the data. Since it is kind of a newer process, we don't have it actually fully ironed out, and we have the capabilities for also personalizing it for the person. But our current structure is that we have it so it does a minor update. We're looking at about every month right now, where it will just add new data every month. And then once a year, we'll do a full replace. So once a year, we'll go through and we'll fully replace it. And that'll ensure that every year, people will get the most up-to-date data, but every month we'll get the most, just the new data. that'll prevent too much like hitting on APIs that people that we're reaching out to. So we're not doing a big change all the time. Furthermore, with that, we also, something we didn't touch on, but that we do have in DataStream is versioning. So DataStream, we provide version numbers. So the major version number, so it would be like 2.0.0. So the first one is a big change. That'll be the once a year, that'll change. And then the little ones will be every month. And so that'll also be a way for people to note that it's just been a minor change each month rather than the major one once a year. We also in the metadata will also to allow people to point back to the original source. So if you are really keen to get the most up-to-date data, you can actually just follow that link to the original source and get it from there if you'd like.
Next question is from Jen. Is there an intention to show real-time data?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we get that one often. It's not our focus right now. So our it's sort of like a map that would be sort of a big endeavor on top of what we're doing. Organizations like the Great Lakes Observing System do a fairly good job of that within like the lake context, but within DataStream, no, it's not real-time data at this stage.
Do you foresee it later on going down that way, or?
You know, yes, probably down, like way down the road, but we've got I think everybody on this call will actually appreciate more than the average sort of person, just that we've got our work cut out for us, just working on sort of the sample-based water quality data as a start. And we just want to do that really, really well and get as much of that data online as we can before we take on more. And I didn't say that in my, like what's made keys to success, but I actually believe that one of our big keys to success was not taking on too much. For example, stepping out of our data type into fish or up north caribou. These were things we were asked, people wanted to see, and of course we'd love to do it, but we can't do it all. Not yet is the answer.
Okay. The next question comes from Kim Barrett. Will DFO and ECCC be contributing data to the Great Lakes program?
Yeah, so we'll definitely be getting data from ECCC for their national long-term water quality monitoring program, as we do in the other regions where we're operating. And we're in the ECCC. We work very collaboratively with them, and I imagine that more data sets will come online as well from them. DFO, we're beginning conversations with DFO, and I think there's a real possibility that we will be pulling in data. It's a question of whether they want to make the data open through their own platform and then we pull, or maybe some data just goes directly to DataStream. It's going to depend on what suits what they need to do, within sort of their own mandate. But I guess the answer is that is definitely, I think, coming.
Okay. And the last question on chat comes from John Bitorf. Can we see an example of the CSV file for upload? Do you want to go into that here, or would you like to tell them about Thursday?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna I'll throw that link, I'll mention it and then I'll throw the link into the chat there. But so we probably won't get into it now just because we're kind of getting near the end of the hour and it's, wouldn't be super helpful for me to rush through it. But luckily on Thursday, we're running a webinar where I'm going to be going through the upload template and the upload process. We've made some changes here in the summer, so we're just kind of getting everybody up to speed. So I'll throw the link here to the registration for that Zoom webinar. I recommend, if you want to see it, register for that webinar, and you can check it out there and then ask any questions following up from that. Also, though, if you want to reach out to on a one-on-one basis, I'm also happy to walk you through that as well.
That's it from the chat questions.
One of the questions that we had during the process of talking with individual conservation authorities was, and Carolyn, you brought up the PWQMN data is already in there. What is the mechanism to deal with duplicates? So if a CA's records have already been included as part of the PWQMN record, and then it's also part of their open data set that's available through their website, how do you remove those duplicates and ensure it doesn't show up twice?
That's a really great question. And this is one of those answers where I'll just say that we meet folks in whatever organizations where they're at. So it would take really looking at how the data is stored otherwise. And what we'll have to do is we'll have to sort of filter out what data is already being shared through the PWQMN. And then we'll look at just sort of sharing the additional data beyond that. So I mean, I don't have a straightforward answer to it in that the actual mechanism for how we'll do that is sort of going to depend on how the data is stored. But I can tell you who will work with you on it, which is likely Patrick will, find ways to do that in a way that doesn't have anybody going through the data line by line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it depends a lot on the group and how if there's an easy way to store it or so. I think I don't want to give like this is the way we'll do it, but there is a way that we can do it. So it'll be dependent on the group.
Okay, and another question that's come up, and I'm sure you've already answered it, but just to reiterate, there's no cost to either provide data or to receive data through DataStream. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So it's a big piece of our, we're a charitable organization. And so this is meant to be fully open and free for anyone to use, both contributing or pulling data from the site. So the answer is yes, available to everybody free of charge. Okay.
I don't see any new last questions coming in there. There is a link that Patrick just shared to the upcoming webinar that he mentioned. I just want to thank you both for participating today and thank everyone for attending. I think it's been a really good session. The recording will be made available and I'll send out a link to all invited participants as well as people who were able to make it today. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can funnel them through me as well as contact either Patrick or Carolyn directly. So thanks again, everyone.
Thanks so much for having us.
Have a great day.
Some of you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.